Today, I want to talk about why you can't get the pieces that you want from the stores you go to. And the answer is that you're weird. You weirdo?
Why you gotta be so weird? Why can't you be like everybody else?
I'm just kidding. There is an answer here, and the answer is that everything you know about fashion is kind of a lie. We watch these incredible runway shows with some of the nicest, most well-made, most beautiful pieces of wearable art that exist on this earth. But then when the season drops, when all of these pieces arrive in stores, you want that grail that you saw on the runway, and it doesn't exist. It is vanished into thin air. So I'll say right off the bat that this concept for a video came from a comment I got with somebody asking specifically about the brand Enfant Riche de Primé. They were wondering, why can't I get the beautiful runway pieces? I go to the stockists, I go to Essence and Mr. Porter, all the places that carry ERD, and I can't find any of the pieces I like. It's just this simple, boring graphic t-shirts and hoodies and jeans and stuff. Where's the beautiful runway stuff? And ERD is kind of the top example of this because they produce really amazing runway shows, really great stuff, tailoring, crazy accessories, leatherwork and stuff. But then what they're probably most known for at retail and most coveted for is the simple graphic streetwear type of stuff that people grab to flip on Grailed and things like that. And the runway stuff doesn't make it into the store. So ERD is like the prime example and the most obvious example, but the truth is this happens with every brand. The grails are almost non-existent, at least the really crazy runway art pieces that some of us weirdos might really want. And the reason for this is that under the surface, the fashion industry does not work the way that you think it does. For example, these runway shows where you see these incredible garments, you might think that they exist for you, the fan, the connoisseur, the buyer of the brand, the end customer, right? But they don't. Really, runway fashion shows are advertisements to the stores. Yeah, that's right. The runway show, it's not really for you. It's for Essence, and it's for Saks Fifth Avenue, right? And it's for, I don't know who else, Maxfield, all these people that are going around to these shows and buying up these pieces for the next season. Of course, it is kind of for you in a way. Otherwise, they wouldn't release the runways to the public at all. It's great marketing. But at the end of the day, the brands are trying to make money, and they make their money from the stockists, the boutiques. So here's what happens, and here's what may get lost in translation for you, the average fashion fan, is that these runway shows happen, these beautiful looks walk down the runway, and then what happens is meetings and negotiations in showrooms and things like that, where buyers from, I'll just use Essence as the example. So the buyer from Essence after the runway show, they go, they talk to Enfant Riche de Primé or any other brand, even at the top, the Balenciagas of the world, right? And they say, all right, let's take a closer look at these. You tell me about them. Tell me about the materials. Tell me about what you think the price point is going to be. That's a huge factor here. And then the buyer from Essence, they look at the trends, they look at the forecast, their algorithms, their sales data, and they try to figure out what from this collection is going to sell and what price is it going to sell for. And that's an incredibly important point. So the most beautiful, grail-worthy art piece, runway pieces, are insanely expensive. They're loss leaders, okay? Essence is not going to buy a ton of crazy embroidered, bedazzled leather, silk, etc. because their customer, maybe they've got one customer for that piece, but that's not worth it for them. They need to think they have many customers for that piece in order for them to place an order. So here's what happens behind the scenes at these ERD showrooms is that all the buyers are saying, okay, this is an expensive brand. I love this. I love what you're doing with the aesthetic of the brand with these runway pieces, but we think the pieces that we can sell are the t-shirts, the jeans, the hoodies, the sweaters, the belts and the hats, and maybe a few shoes, and that's all well and dandy, and you just keep the rest of it. It's very beautiful, but we don't think we can sell it, especially if you're saying we would need to sell it for $8,000 to make our profit. Because the last thing that Essence wants is to buy a piece from ERD for $4,000 that they then have to sell for $8,000 to make their money, and then they have to discount it at the end of the season to 80% for anyone to buy it, and then either they're losing money or ERD's losing money, or they're getting it returned to them. There's these crazy details in the contracts, but at the end of the day, that's what happens if these stockists buy the insane runway pieces. But the pieces still exist, right? They still, they were made for the runway, and that's what it is. That's how you end up with these one-of-one runway pieces or samples, things that are sold in sample sales or archive sales by these brands. That's where they end up. So that's why you're not finding these crazy pieces on Essence or Saks or Mr. Porter or anywhere else. They're just staying in the personal archives of the designers or brands and maybe trickling out to very important customers, the VICs, who are more and more important to these luxury brands, or if you're really lucky, they end up in an archive sale years down the line. So really, it's an economic calculation here. These pieces, they are marketing because they look good and they make the brands look good, but at the end of the day, they are advertisements for the more accessible and less expensive pieces by these brands. For a recent video, when I was researching Rick Owens' pieces and looking up interviews with Rick, he says this explicitly. I'll put the actual quote on screen, but he was very clear about it, that he needs to sell X amount of t-shirts, many, many, many t-shirts, to pay for these crazy runway pieces that actually mean something to him. And I know they mean something to some of you too, so it's sad that you can't get them, but at the end of the day, if there were lots of people willing to buy these pieces, Essence would be buying them from the brands. The fact that Essence isn't buying them from the brands shows that the demand isn't there for these pieces, and that's why you can't buy them, and that's why you never will. So that's enough for the talky portion of this video. Okay, I've done enough talky. Now let's look at some clothes, because throughout the years I have accumulated some very interesting, very limited, more runway or off the runway or sample pieces from these brands that I really do covet. So I want to show you some of those and take a closer look at them so you can see what is out there if you're willing to look. Let's check them out.
Oh, hey, if you do want some crazy pieces, because I do have some crazy pieces, as we're going to see, check out my Grailed. It's in the description. I have hundreds of pieces listed at very fair and reasonable prices. Help me not starve to death. Look, okay, let's be real. I'm not going to starve. All right, back to the video.
Okay, so I actually have quite a few really interesting Balenciaga pieces that fall within these lines. So let's start off by talking about one of those, and I want to talk about this leather jacket. Looks like a pretty average, motorcycle leather jacket, right? No, the details on this thing are insane. The belt details are actually so sick, honestly, very ERD in a way, this kind of Western embellished thing. The shoulder flaps are like metal bottle caps. This button right here, whatever you want to call it, is like a terrifying demon. What the fuck? There's another one down here, by the way. And the back is a giant denim patch, and this starts to give you some pretty clear clues as to when it was from. This was part of the 2018 season, the really famous Balenciaga show, where they had the big multi-layered coats and stuff. It was like a winter graffiti kind of theme, and it was very popular. And this actually never walked that runway. This was like a side piece, maybe a sample piece, capsule piece that was released kind of simultaneously with the collection, but was therefore really not carried at all. And there are very, very few of these out there walking the earth. It is so disconnected from a main collection piece. There are a couple really interesting pairs of shoes. I want to talk about these ones. You see those? I know it's kind of dark, but them's is some spikes. These are the Balenciaga spiked derbies, And these did walk the runway. Like, these are a very coveted runway piece. Again, 2018, I believe. And you can see they have these spikes going all the way down, metal spikes, and the back as well, which makes them so much better than if they were just here, in my opinion. And these, as far as I'm aware, were really only sold in private sales to, like, very important customers. They were not widely available. They may have seeped their way to a few stores, but for the most part, very few pairs of these were ever made. So if you saw them in that runway lookbook in 2018 menswear, you were probably never going to be able to walk into a store and walk out having bought these because they just weren't available. One more Balenciaga piece, I'd also really like to talk about these. These are the block heel derbies because they have this squared off back here. Jesus, those are dirty. One moment. Much better. Okay. So these, almost every pair has a BB metal monogram badge right here at the toe. But these ones don't. Why is that? I actually had a Balenciaga store, retail associate, like, kind of get mad at me or get really suspicious when I brought up that I had these, because I went to their store, I saw the guy was wearing them, and I was like, oh, I have those. And he was like, oh, you have them with the monogram, right? And I was like, no, I have those exact same ones with the squared off plain toe and the block heel. And he was like, you're not supposed to have that because these are uniform shoes. The only way you can get these shoes is if you work at the Balenciaga store, because that's what they give you to wear. So I got these from someone who I guess used to work at the Balenciaga store and was reselling them. So if you want these without the badge, I guess you got to start working for Balenciaga. All right, speaking of unreleased grails, another really interesting one is this jacket from Celine. So pieces like this were made for Eddie Slama's first Celine show, which was spring 2019. They're these really strong shoulder jackets. And the thing is, this exact one never walked the runway. So what happens is, and I don't know the full story, these things, they come to me a little ways down the line. Either somebody saw the original piece like this that walked the runway and went to Celine and said, hey, I want one like this, but kind of different. Or this was another alternate piece or sample piece that they made getting ready for that first Eddie Celine show. I'm not sure which it is, but what's really important to note is that A, almost none of these were made. This may be the only one that exists like this, or there are very, very few. And the other thing is this is not your normal Celine piece. So you see this, there are no tags inside there. Obviously there's a neck tag, but there's no care tags, and that's because it is inside the sleeve. Because this piece was made by the Celine Atelier, all right? How interesting is that? See it for the 2019 men's show made by their atelier. So most Celine pieces are made in factories in Italy or France or whatever. This one was not made at a factory. This was made in the Celine studio, and that's why it is an unattainable grail, because the stuff you buy in stores is made completely differently and much lower quality, honestly, than this. I'll show you one more. Let's talk, to end this out, about ERD. This is the leather zip-up stomper boot, and the thing is, this is not an unattainable runway grail. This one was a runway piece, but it also did end up in stores. How do I know that? Because I bought it from Maxfield, one of the stores that stocks Enfant Riche de Primé stuff. But I'm including it in this video because I actually think it exemplifies what most people think of when they think, like, why can't I get that really cool runway piece? And it's because people don't buy that many of them, so the brand doesn't make that many of them. These, I believe, were sold on the ERD website and Maxfield, and that's it. There were probably only 1 or 2 of these made in every size that they made, and that was it. And it's not because they hate you and don't want you to have cool stuff. It's because there just aren't that many people on Earth that were willing to buy this for what they had to charge for it. This is an incredibly expensive shoe to make, okay? The retail price on these was like $2 grand, maybe even more if I remember correctly. And I'm guessing if they're only making a couple of them, they probably cost like $1,000 to make. Many, many hundreds at the very least. So if they made, 100 of these in every size, they'd be sitting and sitting and sitting, and they wouldn't sell, and it would just be bad business. So that is the real answer as to why you can't get these pieces. Because there aren't enough people like you out there to actually buy them. But apparently there are just a couple, because I own them. All right, that's the video. Thank you so much for watching. Take a look at the other video on screen here. Comment, like, do all these YouTube things that help me in the algorithm. I really appreciate that, and I'll see you next time.